Hello,
everyone.
we are back for part 2. Dressed exactly the same way as promised.
It's like no magic, idea. Isn't it?
Or the lack of same.
Anyway.
But we got them anyway.
Again, we are...
It's gonna go on for a while.
I know. Anyway, we are doing another What We Read because there's so many books that I read over the past few weeks that we really need to play some catch up. So, again, this video is going to be in different sections and I'm gonna kick things off by talking about more review books. So, the first review book that I need to talk about is a book that is actually out by now, and it is I Have Lost My Way by Gail Forman. It's the story of 3 teens told from their perspectives, Freya, Harun, and Nathaniel, and each of them is dealing with some sort of loss and loneliness in their lives, and by coincidence they end up meeting in New York City one day. And I really enjoyed this one because the explorations of the different kinds of loss was very interesting, and I also like the fact that she played on that trope where, you know, sometimes life just randomly throws you in the path of someone you need to meet in order to have you form this connection that would be crucial to, you know, helping you grow and helping you see things from a different perspective, and I quite enjoyed that. Yeah, it was really good. I'm glad Gail has a new YA out, and I hope you guys enjoy it if you give it a shot. Obviously, based on the title and the fact that they're dealing with loss and loneliness, this is a little bit heavier than your typical YA reads. So just go into it knowing that. Next, I read a middle grade, and it's called Ice Wolves, and it's the first in a new series by Amy Kaufman. You may recognize her as the co-author of the These Broken Stars series and Illuminae. Anyway, Ice Wolves is about twins. Their names are Anders and Reyna, and they live in a village where there are 2 elemental races that everyone knows of. There's the Ice Wolves, who basically protect and act like guards for their village, and they're guarding the village from the Scorched Dragons, who are basically just there to apparently incite chaos everywhere by burning everything, because, you know, Scorched Dragon. The problem is, when these 2, you know, transform, because when you're 12, you get the opportunity to do that, it's discovered that they must have a mixed bloodline, because Reyna is a Scorched Dragon and Anders happens to be an Ice Wolf. Obviously that cannot be, but in all the chaos that ensues, Reyna ends up getting herded away with the dragons, and Anders, in order to save his sister, goes into the academy called Ulfar Academy. And it's a cute story. It's a strong beginning for a middle grade series, and I'm curious to see where she's gonna take it, especially after how it ends. But I will say that it seemed a little like I was missing something that would make me really like invested in it, like love it as much as I loved, let's say, Rick Riordan's books. It was good, but I want to see how I feel about the second book before I tell you guys that, you know, this is another one that I would recommend adding to your shelves. But if the premise sounds at all interesting to you, then definitely give it a shot. And then I read... Oh, the next book I read was YA. It's Starry Eyes by Jen Bennett, who is a contemporary YA author I adore. It's about Zori and Lennon, and they used to be best friends and possibly something more, but then something, which you find out later in the book, ruins everything, and so they're sort of enemies now, except they're both stuck with each other on a camping trip.
Ugh.
What I enjoyed about this one is the setting, because it's a camping and hiking thing, so you kind of get to see them experience life in the wild, which is really cool to me as someone who doesn't normally do that. It almost made me want to do it, but then I was like, do I really think I'd survive in the wild for that long? Probably not.
I would've.
And I just enjoyed reading about Zori and Lennon. They're such interesting characters, and I think, as usual, Jen does a great job crafting them so they feel real and complex. And the story itself is a little quieter than most young adult contemporary, I want to say, but it's still really good. As usual, it's another book that I really enjoyed from this author, and I would highly recommend checking it out. Then the next book I read, I actually ended up finishing in a night, because I tried to stop halfway so I could sleep at a decent hour, and my brain wasn't having it because I just needed to know what happened to these characters. It's Emergency Contact, and this is by Mary H.K. Choi. This is also out, I believe, this week. Anyway, it's got 2 main characters, again, a dual point of view book. One is Penny, who is a freshman in college, and the other is Sam, who is not quite in school anymore and is basically working at a coffee shop while he tries to pursue his dream of becoming a documentary filmmaker. And it's really cute because it's another one of those things where they end up meeting at random and they sort of form this connection, and they end up getting to know each other better through texts that they exchange. And it was really like compelling. It's also kind of surprisingly heavy because both characters are dealing with a lot in their home lives. But I liked seeing their friendship develop. I liked seeing like where the story went for each of them as individuals, and I just couldn't set it down once I started. So that's a testament to that. The one thing I will say is that these characters are not necessarily always making the best decisions or saying the things that I would agree with in certain situations, but I mean, that's just realistic because you don't always agree with every single person in the universe. So it seemed true to their characters though, so that's something I can't really fault it for. But you guys, if you're not really fond of characters that you maybe would feel are a little unlikable for you or that you would disagree with, that might be something you want to know about this book. The last review book that I need to talk about is Beyond a Darkened Shore. This is a book that combines Celtic and Norse mythology. It's about a princess named Ciara who has a connection to the Tuatha De Danann. I can't say it. Tuatha De Danann. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that, I swear. I tried. She realizes, or it's revealed to her in a prophetic dream or prophetic vision, that she needs to team up with someone who is from her worst enemies, someone who is a Viking, in order to save the world as she knows it. And it basically follows the journey as she goes and does just that. This one is filled with recognizable young adult fantasy tropes, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because it has enough unique elements in it to make it stand out from the rest. I just think that, personally for me, I couldn't really get into the characters. I wasn't really invested in them, and I also just, there were just parts that I really was like, you guys need to focus on doing something else, and they're busy thinking about their feelings for each other. Which I'm not always a big fan of, because if it overshadows like the actual story that's going on, even though it didn't super do that in this, it just overshadowed it enough that I was like, oh, okay. It ends well though, I have to say. Like, and the fact that I needed to know how they, like, you know, how it would turn out for everyone in the end was, I guess, a point in its favor as well. So I kind of have mixed feelings on this one. It's not one I would easily recommend if you're looking for Norse mythology to read. Rick Riordan has an entire series, just saying. Yeah, it was okay. That's basically the bottom line of that. And so we are done with this review section. Moving on.
So, as far as gods are concerned, my next two set of, I guess, franchises I want to say that I want to review are right up along that alley. And so I read Imperial Phase 1 and 2, which is basically like the beginning of the third, I want to say, collection of The Wicked and the Divine. The third omnibus collection hasn't come out yet, but I would say that this would be the beginnings of the third. It is about 12 gods who are reborn every 90 years. Okay. And when they're reborn, or they awaken in the consciousness of the human beings, they become rock stars and international superstars and whatever, and after another second year they die. So much has happened already in, I would like to say, the third big installment, right? Betrayals have happened. Gods have been murdered and died.
Sounds a lot like Greek mythology.
And more, and other gods have awoken, right, to the full 12. So before the full 12 could wake, you know, some had perished, and then the last piece there. There are a couple of rogue elements, and now they have no choice but to either stick to their old guns or fight off this darkness. Old guns being business as usual, let's figure ourselves out, or hey, you know, there's a darkness coming, let's change that around. I think Kieran Gillen is a genius. It's like if Neil Gaiman had a Zeus and Athena moment where fully formed Athena springs from Zeus's forehead. I would say that the works of Kieran Gillen sort of spring from that vein of Neil Gaiman stuff, because it's so compelling. It's insane how they're able to, you know, milk this much story out of all of the insanity that's already happened in the first, you know, 6 collected TPBs. So there's that. Secondly, and then of course, secondly, speaking of gods, Black Goat Blues. I finally got to read it. It is the second book of the Red Right, you know, to follow. It is the sequel to Red Right Hand, and it follows the mythos wars kind of mythology. Sorry, and it follows the Mythos Wars series. It still stars Charlie, who has proven more than enough that she is like the biggest badass to ever walk the known realms, and she will absolutely not take any crap from any elder gods. Oh no, she won't. And that's what it's all about. It's all, you know, I got into a Cthulhu phase. I haven't yet, you know, but like a third-party Cthulhu phase. Like I haven't really gotten to the crazy racist Lovecraft stuff, but which is great source material, I'm sure. But it's just all of the derivative stuff is appealing to me, like this, and of course Pandemic Cthulhu, which I love. It's a great follow-up Levi Black is an amazing writer. He absolutely meant what he said when, at one point, he's like, I could write better than some of the people that he's reading. Read his stuff. It's just such a joy reading all of this stuff.
Okay, we moved on to the next section of this video, which is part of my Read or Die project. And that's basically just me reading stuff that I actually have on my TBR. This particular section is focused on all the manga I've read since the last video. Or the last time I talked about stuff. It's gonna be quick.
Since before part 1 of this video.
It's gonna be quick. So we have volume 2 of Boruto Naruto Next Generations. We all know that I love Naruto and Naruto Shippuden and now Boruto. And while I prefer the TV show to the manga, it's still kind of fun to see how the artists draw these characters.
Yeah, the art is very different. The art's very different from the TV show.
And sometimes they include things that are scenes that aren't necessarily in the show. This one still covers the events that are occurring right after the Chunin exams arc, which is something that shows in the Boruto movie. And they're about to do it on the TV show as well. And it's nothing new, which is part of the reason why I'm kind of like, oh, I should really stop reading these volumes of manga because I'm like, I don't need to collect them like this. But it's, again, I just have a soft spot for this world and these characters, and, you know, it's just fun to revisit it. I have a lot of feelings, okay?
It's the only show that I'll tolerate
I have a lot of specifically, at the moment, Konohana feelings, but
duh.
We're not even gonna go there.
We are such trash for those two.
And I also read Orange Future, which is the 6th volume of this series. It's by Ichigo Takano, and this is basically the story of the events in the other volumes of Orange, but told from the perspective of one of the secondary characters in those. His name is Suha, and he is basically like the third wheel in the sort of relationship between like the 3 main characters. It's really good. It's really heartbreaking to me because like he's obviously not like the first choice in the other books, and it's just so sad, but he's such a good person, and so it was just nice to like revisit his perspective on things and just to see how that all plays out for him. And then I read the first volume of The Ancient Magus Bride, which is by Kori Yamazaki. Let me tell you, I already was like interested after watching like the first prequel.
Yeah, we watched the OAV, yeah.
Holy crap, after reading this one, I'm just like, I'm slightly tempted to keep reading the manga, but also like, I should just watch the TV show. It's so interesting. Like all the characters that I've now met in this volume, and like where I sort of see the story going now, I'm just kind of like, I'm here for this. Essentially it's the story of this girl who was auctioned off, and she gets purchased by this mage who never buys anything because she's special. We don't quite know yet why completely what it means for her to be this special, but it's just so like their dynamic in the manga, I'm just like, I have a lot of feelings about, and I'm just really looking forward to the rest of it. And then I read the first volume of Dream and Sun, also by Ichigo Takano. This is his new-ish series. The premise is very similar in vibe to Fruits Basket. The main character in this one runs away from home because she feels underappreciated and like unwanted. And she meets this stranger in the park, and he says that she can stay with him as long as she can fulfill 3 conditions, which is to tell him the reason why he's running away, to have a dream, and to fall in love. Now, see, the premise is already kind of like a little out there, but it's funnier even to me that, you know, she actually gets invited to live in this house with like these 3 dudes, and she just goes for it. And it's just, I think the only reason like I really enjoyed it was because I really like the characters in it.
Glee.
I think the characters are so intriguing. I can't wait to get to know them better as the series progresses, and also like the art style is very cute, so there's that. Alright, that section is over with. Moving on.
I will now, well, I went on a series binge as well this time, and for those of you who've seen my review on the book Fledgling by Nicole Conway, it is a story about Javid, a half-gray elf, half-human child who gets a chance to do something that has never been done in a long time in a world where dragons were basically kind of commodified and turned into like livestock. You know, is that he was able to tame a wild dragon and have the wild dragon accept him as his rider and not just sort of be broken to bridle. And from there joins the kind of dragon riding academy in the giant battle against the gray elves that have been spanning the last several decades. Halfway through reading Fledgling, I immediately bought Avian Trader and Immortal, which are the other 3 books in I would say the quartet. And that was not a mistake. That was absolutely the best thing to do. I think Javid has joined the ranks of the other Dragon Riders. I will do a Dragon Book roundup pretty soon, but I wanted to bring this out because words has to get out there, and pretty much halfway through Traitor, which is the third book, and by then, you know, things about the war have been discovered, things about Javid's own past has been discovered. There's always that part of like being a Dragon Rider. It's like, who am I and where am I from? It's a thing. I had to pick up the first book of a new cycle that happens after the events of Immortal called Savage, also by Nicole Conway, also set in the same world, with the events set after the, you know, well, yeah, I already said that. And I finished that too. I absolutely finished that too.
It seems you really liked it.
It started off slow, but then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, this is going to be different.
like, whoa.
This is going to be different. This is going to be pretty much insane. And so I absolutely can't wait for the other books. I hope it's also 4 parts because I need more of this stuff. And I absolutely recommend it to anybody who wants... and you'll hear me say it again during my Dragon Book roundup, both on the blog and maybe eventually on the vlog. But if you like dragons, this is...
Oh yeah, maybe you could do a whole video.
It's absolutely middle grade. I would say it's decent. You know, people may... and I liked it. So I would totally recommend it to anybody who's hungering for some new Dragon Rider stuff.
Okay, we're moving on to the next and last section for me, and it's one of the biggest sections, actually. It's also for Read or Die, but this time we're going to talk about romance, specifically more or less new adult romance. For some reason in March, I was just in the mood for all the stories that end with happily ever after, and so I just went for it. I talked about a couple in the previous What We Read video we uploaded this week, but I'm gonna talk about more now because I can. First, we have 3 books in the same series, Wild Seasons. We have Sweet Filthy Boy, Dirty Rowdy Thing, and Dark Wild Night, and these are all by Christina Lauren. It essentially starts off with 3 best friends who have just graduated, and they go to Vegas for a weekend to celebrate, and while they're there, they end up meeting these 3 guys who are also friends, who are also in Vegas, and somehow in the middle of them being drunk and kind of high on their, you know, excitement, they all end up married. In the first book, Ansel and Mia, Ansel is the Frenchman and Mia is a former ballet dancer, and she's off to business school in the fall. They end up staying married because they were instantly attracted to each other, and they're actually the reason everyone met. And for the summer, Mia goes to Paris and spends time with Ansel. And what I liked about this one is that Mia is dealing with some personal stuff, and I think it's handled very, very well. The one reservation I have about it is because the turn of events that kind of leads to the conflict in their relationship is a little bit like really soap opera levels for me, which is not a bad thing per se. But yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. It made me happy. I love the banter, love the characters. But then I read the second book, and this one centers around Finn, who is Finn, who is Canadian, and Harlow, who is basically like the daughter of Hollywood royalty. These 2 are very independent people, and they insist that their thing is only all about the sex, but really these 2 actually end up realizing that they're starting to rely on each other for companionship, and you know, they also want to start helping each other fix like the situations they're in, and it's really sweet to see them both kind of try to help each other out. And I was not expecting to fall in love with that story, but I did. It was so good. I was like in tears by the end of it, so that was great. And then I read Dark Wild Night, which predictably has my favorite guy character in the series. His name is Oliver, he's Australian, and he owns a comic bookstore in San Diego. And he ends up paired with their other friend, Lorelai, or Lola for short, and she is a graphic novel illustrator and writer. And her graphic novel is about to be turned into a movie, so she's dealing with all of the things that come with that. But she's also pretending, she and Oliver are pretending that they're only friends and there's nothing there, even though they both secretly want something more. And just watching their tension as they like fight it so hard, I'm just like, guys, get together! But also like, it was fun to see them like deal with all the other pressure that Lola was facing and how that affected their relationship. And it was just wonderful. I enjoyed the series so much. I know there's a 4th book. There's a reason I haven't gotten to it yet. I'm gonna have to wait a little while before I start it. And if you read the first 3 books, you probably know why, if you know what the 4th one is about. Okay, next, I read 2 more books in the Wait For You series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. First is the novella that comes between the first and second books. It's called Trust in Me, and that book is basically all the events in the first book, but told from the guy's perspective. And I have to say, I actually think I might have enjoyed it a little more than the first book, only because it was just nice to be in Cam's head versus Avery's head. Like, I love Avery, but Cam is just like such a sweetheart. it was sort of heartbreaking to kind of see how much he struggled with Avery, you know, keeping things from him. And I just, oh, it was just so good. It was just so much fun to revisit that story. To see his perspective on things, to see how he thought of Avery, and to see his relationship with other people. So great, so good. And then, because I couldn't help myself, I ended up reading Be With Me, which is the second book in that series. It's about Cam's friend Jace and his sister Teresa, or Tess. And what is interesting to me is that I predicted that I was going to enjoy this one because I'm a sucker for that trope where like the girl falls in love with her brother's best friend. And I did love their relationship. I thought it was super cute. I enjoyed it so much. And I was not expecting what happens in that book, but it was...
What's happening in that book?
Well, what's happening in that book. It was really enjoyable. Again, Jennifer Armentrout's writing is so great. It's so easy to read, so easy to get swept up in, and she's so good about doing characters that feel like real people. So, thoroughly enjoyed that. And then, last 3 books are all part of the same series. So, we start off with Normal and Okay, which is basically like a 2-parter. It tells the story of how Rory deals with a lot of like trauma in her past, as well as pursuing this new friendship / maybe something more with a boy named Sam at her new school. And it is an angsty read because the things that Rory had to deal with are no joke. They're very serious things, and I felt so much for her while she was trying to make sense of it all for herself and to like put all those demons to rest. And I also just like seeing her eventually have these people who she could rely on and trust, and it was just so good. Like, I could not stop reading once I'd started it. Danielle Pearl's writing is super addictive, so easy to read, and she just, again, also like Jennifer Armentrout, she does a great job bringing a whole cast of characters to life and making them feel like real people. So of course I immediately dove into the 3rd book in that whole series. It's about 2 of the secondary characters in the first 2 books, Tucker and Carlay, and they were together in the first 2 books, but then by the time this 3rd book rolls around, they've kind of broken up because of something a secret that was revealed to them, and we don't find out what they're talking about until like halfway through the book. I really enjoyed it because I love also this trope of like, you guys were together, something drew you apart, and then like second chance. And it was really like, oh, the tension between them was so well done. The banter was so well done. The thing that I will say is that the ending of this one is a little dramatic, like soap opera levels again. Again, nothing wrong with that. I enjoyed it still. But yeah, it was also really good. I'm so glad that Rachel from Hello Charlie told me to read this book series. I'm in the middle of the 4th one right now, so that one's gonna be my next What We Read, but it's also really good. Everything has been getting like 4 stars and up from me for that series, so if you have not heard of Danielle Pearl and if you're into romance, you might want to check out her stuff. Woo! Okay, we have reached the end of this What We Read recap.
Part 2!
Woo! So many books. We should be back to normal now. Thank goodness.
No, we're not. No, we're...
Oh wait, we're not normal though.
No, it's not gonna happen. But that just means there's more books to review.
Anyway, we'll see you guys next time for our next video.